Game week has arrived, and a few things are for sure. This game will happen. Ollie Gordon will play, and one of these teams will lose due to overconfidence. And it might surprise you who.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we are partially brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. It is the best in the ticketing industry, so get squared away with Game Time today. Meanwhile, we shift into game week as we prepare for the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, and I implore everybody to go check out Believe in OK State podcast. Justin Southwell recently had somebody from the Jackrabbit Illustrated on his show, Dallas. Dallas is a great dude, seemingly, has a very good show. Make sure you also go check out Jackrabbit Illustrated because they have a lot of confidence. And as they should to some degree, they do have a culture of winning, just like you have to learn how to win. These guys essentially have to learn how to lose because all they've done is win for 2+ years. Their last loss being against Iowa, which they think there's some sort of a comparison, but not really. They're like the FCS version of Utah. But this is a different team that they're bringing to the fold as opposed to the team that they had last season, which seems to be something that isn't talked about enough. I never thought that there would be a day that we would be disrespected by an FCS opponent. It's kind of a rough feeling. Now, they're not your typical FCS opponent, but there's a lot of overconfidence. And they did mention how they'd seen some podcasts that disrespected it. South Dakota State. I haven't seen any of those Oklahoma State podcasts that think that they're just a little old FCS school that can't do nothing. I haven't seen any of that, but I think it's ridiculous. If there is an Oklahoma State podcast out there I'm unaware of that has talked about SDSU being an FCS opponent and we're going to run away with the game, that's not exactly accurate, but neither is the fact that the depth being comparable is accurate. They do believe that South Dakota State and Oklahoma State, depth-wise, are pretty comparable. They also believe that the starting lineups will be one and the same. They feel like this team, their team, was always built to beat North Dakota State University, and they believe Oklahoma State is the same as North Dakota State. They believe that the offensive line at Oklahoma State is going to be essentially the same as North Dakota State. So they're used to this, they're ready for this, and they're not going to be unprepared. They did talk about Illinois and their phenomenal running back from way back in the day, Rashard Mendenhall, being pretty comparable to an Ollie Gordon, which is maybe fair analysis. Rashard Mendenhall did have 1,690 yards his last year in college. He also, from a size perspective, somewhat close, 5'11", 210, as opposed to Ollie Gordon, 6'2", 225. I don't think they run the same, but I think there is some comparisons there. So they do have a little bit of a track record being able to slow somebody of Ollie Gordon's caliber down a little bit, but maybe not enough. They think that they can control Alan Bowman, or as they like to say, Alan Bauman. I can't talk crap. I called their quarterback Gronkowski the other day. It's Gronowski, so fair is fair. But they did talk about how Alan Bauman was not going to pick them apart by any stretch unless something miraculous happened. We'll see if the miraculous has, in fact, come to fruition this Saturday. But they keep sleeping on the defense, and I love it. They keep sleeping on the secondary and Corey Black, and they don't think that there's enough back there to control their wide receivers. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. They didn't throw shade the entire time, right? But they did sleep on a lot of guys. Just like they mentioned, they might see a little bit of Sesi Valahi. Well, guys, Sesi Valahi is definitely going to be seen, even though Ollie Gordon's going to play and Trent Howland's going to play. We're just good enough and deep enough at that spot that we should be able to play a lot of Trent and a lot of Sesi and limit some of the touches for an Ollie Gordon. They're not going to be surprised by the size of our wide receivers or our cornerbacks, which is fine, and they are accurate from a size perspective. They're arguably bigger than we are when it comes to their corners, so that's definitely a matchup that is worth watching. They think that we are going to live and die by the run, aka they think we're going to die because they do think they have some guys that can hold Ollie Gordon to 4 yards of carry. They did mention needing to worry to some degree about DeJon Stribling, but they may not know enough about Io Shotamite King. They gave Brennan Presley some praise. They gave Colin Oliver some praise, Nick Martin some praise. Of course, Mike Gundy and the O-line to some degree some praise, but they also said that we are not as physical as Iowa. So if you go back to the last game that they lost, which was against Iowa over 2 years ago, that from a physicality standpoint, they got beat up a decent amount, which didn't affect them going on to winning an FCS national title, but it could have because they did deal with some injuries because of the Iowa game, just because Iowa beat them up. But they don't think Oklahoma State is going to do the same, nor do they think that we're going to be able to exploit them down low because of their center. Good guy, but we'll get to that in a second. They did mention how we barely beat Central Arkansas and we did lose to South Alabama. Again, the conversation from their perspective seems to be more about how they are going to be prepared for this game. This is by no stretch of the imagination their Super Bowl, although I would argue that it should be. I appreciate the amount of overconfidence. I do think that it is going to be beneficial for Oklahoma State. They also talked about how offensively we are a high-flying league with a lot of, shootouts. That's not exactly the case. The fan comments, I know, are a little bit different, but this is what they think about Oklahoma State. This is the old-school Oklahoma State team that's going to run occasionally and throw up a lot of yards. It's seemingly what the fan base thinks, but the Big 12 has changed. The Big 12 is a running league. The Big 12 is more reminiscent of the old school SEC nowadays. So those shootout, wild, crazy 60 to 70-point games, they were fun, but they're also a thing of the past. Of course, like I said, they did praise some of the dudes like BP and Colin Oliver and Ollie and Nick Martin, and to some degree the O-line, but I find it very disrespectful to say that our O-line is the same as North Dakota State's. North Dakota State's a very good ball club. North Dakota State does traditionally have an O-lineman or two that end up making some semblance of the pros. I don't think it's the same, nor do I think that there should be any disrespect towards them whatsoever. They have some guys that we are going to need to slow down. We've talked a little bit about Amar Johnson, 5'10", 205-pound running back out of Chaminade, Fallon, Missouri. He's going to be pretty good. Angel Johnson is another scat back running back that I think we're definitely going to need to pay some attention to. They're very high on tight end Brody Gormley. They're a tight end-laden team. Again, this is somewhat reminiscent of Iowa State. They just happen to lose some of their tight ends. They have 10 tight ends on the roster, so clearly that is an area that they plan on using quite often. From a wide receiver perspective, they have Griffin Wildy, pretty good wide receiver. They're pretty high on him. They have Kai O'Day from Colorado State. Elijah Irvin is another wide receiver from Snow College. We know how good some of the Snow guys can be. Kentrell Progine is another wide receiver that they're very, very high on and has a lot of statistical categories that he was able to lead them in this previous season. From a linebacker perspective, they're so high in their linebackers. They said that they believe that 6'1", 225-pound Adam Bach is a D1 starter almost anywhere in the country and would be able to compete right next to our guys at Oklahoma State. I think that's a big statement, but their linebackers do play that good alongside a senior 6'2", 215-pound Graham Spalding. Good dude. Defensive end, number 8, Blake Peterson, started the first 7 games for Iowa State last year, so he's bound to be a big addition. Number 1 at safety, Tucker Large, has the ability to get a pick six. Evidently, they have a cornerback, 6'2", 202 pounds, in Dallas Beanham, who has the ability to creep up on their pick six and interception records. So they definitely got some guys that we need to pay attention to. They had mentioned some of their MVPs that they were looking for: Mark Gronowski, Brody Gormley, Griffin Wildy, and Gus Miller. We'll get to Gus in a second because, again, I'm not throwing a bunch of shade. I do think that we win the game. I'll talk a little bit more about that why at the end. But, yeah, South Dakota State fan base is not afraid of Oklahoma State. This is not their Super Bowl. They're not viewing it as that. And I think that is the biggest issue here. I think it's the biggest problem that you're going to run into if you're a Jackrabbit fan is underestimating Oklahoma State, because I can assure you the Cowboys are not underestimating South Dakota State. We are going to be prepared. Everybody is very well aware that there was that South Alabama game that happened. But we've got quarterbacks. You've got quarterbacks. It'll be a fun matchup, just like it will be fun for all of you to get squared away today with the right tickets, the best tickets in the game with Game Time tickets. You can wait to the last minute with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called the Game Time Pick that makes it easier for you to get the best seats faster and easier. The Game Time Pick filters out all the craziness to show you the best incredible deals on seats so you don't have to waste all the time searching through thousands of tickets. The seat view gives you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so there's no hooliganry of getting in the wrong spot. The scalpers put you in an inopportune situation. Don't mess with that. Get with Game Time. The lowest price guarantee means that they will credit you back 110% of the difference if you find something better, because it ain't going to happen. You need to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem that code, LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute purchase, lowest prices guaranteed. It's not guaranteed that you're going to have the money, but you can have a guarantee to some degree if you hammer home on the Cowboys, hammer the over with FanDuel. We talk about FanDuel a lot because it's America's #1 sports book for a reason. Now, you have a little bit of a different reason to brag up FanDuel as well. Right now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV and YouTube. With the YouTube TV base plan, you'll then be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a correct form of payment, and you can cancel anytime you want. All you got to do is get squared away today. We're hammering the over on the Cowboys at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go there today to download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get squared away today in the best in the game. The Jackrabbits do have the best player in the game in FCS, and they might have one of the next best players in the game that gives him the ball from under center. Yes, Gus Miller is that good. Yes, Mark Gronowski, goodness me, it doesn't have a K, but I want to say it anyways. He's a very, very good quarterback. Guys, if you were to put the two next to each other, Oklahoma State quarterback room and South Dakota State University's quarterback room, I'm sure there would be a lot of similarities. He's a phenomenal guy, which is why he just won the Walter Payton Award, which is the equivalency of their Heisman for the FCS level. He was third all-time in South Dakota State single-season total yards history with 3,460 last year. He led the FCS with a 179.7 passer efficiency rating. He had 29 touchdowns. Coming in at 6'3", 230 pounds, he's not going to be a surprise. And you know what? Justin Southwell gave him a very, very good comp. His comp was that of Zach Robinson. From a size perspective, there's some similarities. Now, he can get out and run, Mr. Gronowski. He can get out and take off with the ball. Maybe not quite like a Zach Robinson, but go see what Justin was talking about, because he even put out a stat metric up on Twitter that showed the comparison between the two, and it was a really good comparison. Guys, Mark Gronowski is third all-time in school history for career offense with 8,977 yards. And this previous season, he did get several Big Ten offers to leave SDSU to go to a quote-unquote bigger conference, right? Which the Big Ten's definitely a bigger conference. The quote-unquote side, maybe not so much better. But behind him, they have another very intriguing story. And number 7, Chase Mason. Chase Mason is a 6'4", 230-pound center fielder for the Nebraska Cornhuskers who had a big bat. He was a solid dude on base, But after a couple of years of playing big-time baseball, he decided that he wasn't done with his college football dream. So he came to SDSU knowing that he was going to have to sit behind Gronowski last season and again this year. But they're saying he's way too good, way too talented, and way too athletic to not play, at least to some capacity. So this is very reminiscent of Oklahoma State. The difference is they don't have Garrett Rangel in the middle. So they might have the big-time guy, the potential NFL-level guy. They also have the athletic specimen dude that is really hard to recreate, that you can't really make in a lab, but they don't have Garrett Rangel. And I think that is going to be the biggest differentiation when you're talking about the comparison between the QB rooms. Situationally, they're going to be able to use a guy just like we are going to be able to situationally use a guy. But those situations are going to be few and far between if you're not controlling the game, if you're not controlling the clock. There's a lot of reasons why Oklahoma State should have the ability to win this game, none of which has anything to do with being disrespectful to SDSU. I think everybody in the country is aware that this is not your typical FCS opponent. It's not a very good FCS opponent at that, because it is a team that can beat you. They will jump up and give us a game for the ages if we allow them to do so. And if you listen to their Sports Illustrated dudes and their fan base and some of the comment sections, they wholeheartedly believe in their team. They believe that they're good enough to get this thing done to win this game. They are good enough. Because when you have, people like that on the roster, they had several dudes make it to the NFL, whether it be drafted or a unsigned free agent, as did Oklahoma State. But that's a big deal for SDSU. This game is a big deal for SDSU. They're not exactly treating it like that. They're treating it like it's a big game, but they're not treating it like it's a Super Bowl, which can go one of two ways, right? They could be overly excited, which be detrimental, but they could be a little under excited, to some degree as well, if they're not approaching this like it's going to be the most difficult game they play all season by far. Again, the comparisons to Illinois, they're cute. I don't get them. The comparisons to Iowa, they're about to find out that also is somewhat cute. Now, Iowa defensively is good, and they are physical. But once again, this is people underestimating this defense. They did talk about us being 123rd in defensive secondary category, 141st, whatever, in a defensive category. The 3-3-5, they feel like they have enough weapons to be able to exploit the 3-3-5, which is going to be big for them. They're going to have to be able to do so. The mixing between the 3-3-5 and the 4-2-5 should be able to give them an extra layer to pay attention to. But at the end of the day, I just don't know that they're going to have enough. They think they're going to have enough. They think that they can legitimately win this game, which is a good thing. You want your opponent to be confident. But your opponent's not going to face anything like this all year. Your opponent hasn't faced anything like this in the last couple of years. So I do think that there's a little bit of a false bravado scenario going on from South Dakota State country. And we were going to welcome you to Stillwater. It should be a whale of a game. And I do think at some point in time, it's going to be close. I do think that point in time is going to be early as opposed to late, because long drives win games. And it's not just the fact that our offensive line is the same size as North Dakota State University's. That very well may be, but what we have is the depth. There's no way in God's purple earth that North Dakota State University had guys that have over 220 starts between them. Not even at an FCS level or a D2 level, right? You're talking Power 4 football. You're talking Big 12 football for most of these dudes. And then you're talking about somebody like a Jason Queso Brooks that came over from playing SEC ball. You got somebody like Noah McKinney, who's a backup, who came over with a very, very good statistical record from UNLV, doesn't even get to play. That's a big difference. Yes, their linebacker room is very, very good, but they're not quite Nick Martin good. Nick Martin is an All-American for a reason, or he's at that level for a reason, as is Colin Oliver, as is Kendall Daniels. And now the Kendall Daniels is closer to the box. Whatever run game they're trying to get going without the help of their quarterback, it's going to be difficult. And their quarterback can run. So it is something to pay attention to. Maybe they'll utilize a lot of RPO stuff. We do a little bit of RPO stuff. Was Zane Flores in the game? Yeah, sure. RPO all day, every day. But we don't necessarily need to do that, nor do we need to look for creases in a zone blocking scheme. They are gap sound. They need to keep remaining gap sound. But their overconfidence, in my opinion, it's not bulletin board material, but it is something of concern. If I'm an SDSU fan, the fact that I don't know enough about Oklahoma State, or I don't know a lot of names outside of Ollie Gordon, to me is going to be slightly problematic. The respect for Brennan Presley is great. The respect for Mike Gundy is great. But calling this defense less physical than Iowa, that's disrespectful. Call a spade a spade. They also mentioned that they believe that Tucker Large will be able to get a pick six in this game, one of their safeties. They believe that Dallas Beenum will be able to also get an interception in this game. So they think that their defense is going to pick off Alan Bowman multiple times. Very well, maybe. Of course, we all have to see the Alan Bowman of new, because until we see it on game days, it doesn't really matter if he has improved in the pocket or he hasn't. So we're not, uncharacteristically unaware of what we have at quarterback. But I think it's another one of those scenarios that if you do have some limitations at quarterback, one, you're okay because you have a 1B scenario. And then you have Zane Flores, who could basically be a 1C scenario. So I know that they think their depth is comparable to ours. I don't think that it is. Their line, their O-lines, comparable size to ours. Their cornerbacks, definitely comparable size to ours. Their linebackers are definitely power four worthy size dudes with some talent to boot. But ironically enough, it's the overconfidence of SDSU that I would use as the cautionary tale for this game, which is a good spot for us to be in Cowboy country. Just like it's a good spot for you to be in if you've got a late trip or you've got a lot of madness happening at work, to get squared away today with 5-hour energy. It doesn't matter if you're paying attention to back to school or you're trying to get yourself squared away at work for lunch. You need a little bit more in the game. And 5-hour energy is going to give it to you. They're going to give you that extra energy you need to stay in the game. You can tackle whatever the to-do list is for the day. They always have a huge list of projects or products for you to choose from for all the projects that you might have at home, or as I love to use them as I'm traveling on the road, as I get set to make a trip to Kansas City this weekend. Hopefully I'll be able to swing over to Stillwater. Depends on game time. Who knows? Before your workout, you need 5-hour energy. If you're watching the Cowboys or the Jackrabbits, you probably need some 5-hour energy. If you're watching the Jackrabbits, you might need some extra 5-hour energy. Guys, 5-hour energy is the brand for hardworking people that hardworking people have trusted for over 20 years. They're the brand that helps you stay alert and feeling energized all day, even if the day happens to be very hectic. You need to stock up on the money-saving multi-packs to make sure that you never run out of this deliciousness, the energizing 5-hour energy shots. You can get this today by going to 5hourenergy.com. Of course, that's the number 5, hourenergy.com, to get some 5-hour energy products in you soon. Get it with the promo code LOCKEDONCFB. Go there today to receive 20% off your order. Now, this offer is only valid through September 30th. It's one order, and it cannot be used with other promotions. The code is also not good with the subscription order. But you need to get 5-hour energy today. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Do it now so you're prepared for the craziness that is to be this college football weekend. Lastly, to put a nice little bow on this thing, you are right to bring up the fact that we didn't play well against Central Arkansas. You're right to bring up the fact that we did lose to South Alabama. But I think that this is a game where the players realize that the comparison between South Dakota State and South Alabama are naturally going to happen. Just like any of the disgruntlement you're hearing from some of the prognostications in regards to Oklahoma State being 4th place or 3rd place or 7.5 win total. those individuals are going to point towards South Alabama, as they should. But we're going to exercise that demon. That demon of South Alabama will be exercised this weekend. So maybe I'm being a little overly confident, kind of like South Dakota State, but I also think that it makes a whole lot of sense for us just to worry about the things that we can control. We should be able to control the game on the ground, even if their linebackers and safeties are the deepest thing in the FCS in sliced bread. This is not a disrespectful statement towards the FCS ball club that has been running things for a couple years now, that took over from running things from North Dakota State. But this isn't North Dakota State. Our offensive line is not a bunch of bison. They are good, but this is a different step up, right? So anybody saying that the Cowboys are going to win, especially somebody like me saying they're going to win like 41-21, that's not shade at South Dakota State. That is just a promotion of where Oklahoma State football was last year, the year before, and even to some degree 2021. This defense, to me, has shades of that 2021 D. Is it going to be a top 5, top 3 defense in America right next to Georgia and Bama at the end of the year? Maybe not. But the size that they have on the line in the cornerback room is admirable. Their confidence that they're displaying is admirable. The fact that they're a ridiculously phenomenal winning program, very admirable. But they keep leaving off the fact that they had to bring in 36 new dudes. So the last 2 undefeated seasons, the last 2 national titles, those guys are for the most part gone. You do still have Mark Gronowski. You do still have a linebacker. You do still have a wide receiver. But there is a lot of falsities being pushed here. Their D-line is not going to be able to compete with our O-line, no matter how much they think it's a lot like North Dakota State. Our wide receiver core is something they haven't seen ever. It's not even close to Iowa. I mean, guys, we had an Iowa transfer wide receiver that wasn't even able to play. And even if he would have been able to play, he wasn't going to get to play because he was a backup. The comparisons between Iowa and North Dakota State and Illinois, they're unnecessary. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. Oh, by the way, at the end of the day tomorrow, the Big 12 will be on record. Paul's got a game. KU's got a game. Colorado's got a game. And I do think that the Big 12 has a good day in the games, but nonetheless, it's good to have college football season finally here. It's good to have an opponent like South Dakota State coming in that is a very difficult ball club that would be competitive in most Power 4 conferences. I'll give them this. South Dakota State would be good enough to compete for 6th, 7th place in the Big 10. They'd be good enough to compete for 9th, 10th place in the SEC for sure, maybe even higher. They could be that competitive to some degree in the Big 12. I do think that the parity is different. I think that by and large, if you look at like a South Alabama, the starters 11 on 11 were pretty even. The depth wasn't, but we didn't even get a chance to utilize the depth. So if their 11 on 11 is as solid as Oklahoma State's, it's going to be a whale of a game. But in the fourth quarter, when depth does in fact matter, that's when I think that we will see a big discrepancy in the end. Do you think that we'll be playing a decent amount of backups, not because SDSU is a scrub team that we're just going to be able to mollywop, but because we're deep enough and talented enough that our rotations shouldn't have much of a drop-off. Therefore, we're going to rotate all game, knowing that it's going to be 90-plus degrees, and coming from South Dakota, that's not completely normal, right? So it's going to be hot. We're going to rotate dudes all game long. You're not going to really have the ability to do so. And if you do, if South Dakota State is as deep as some of their fan base feels like and some of their expert punditry, then it'll be a long day. Or maybe we're right, and it's not a long day. Well, it's a long day for them. And a long trip back. Who knows? Cowboys, 21-41. Get the dub. You know the drill. You also know that I love you. As always, God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere, so happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. I'm podcasting people out there. Do what you do, hit the stars, leave a review. All righty, y'all. Later, my taters.